Hello, 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 everyone. Trailblazing families and trailblazing families to be. Hope everyone's having a good day so far. I have a special guest today, two special guests. I have Emily Venmo from Prisma Online School, and I also have, and she works for Prisma, and then I have a parent who has kids in Prisma, Caitlin Doemner, I think. And their family, Worldschools, like I do, and hopefully you guys do or will soon. You can find them on Instagram, all at all over the map family. I love that. So hello, ladies. How are you?
Good.
Hello. So great to be
here.
Awesome. So let me know where you guys are situated right now. Emily, you're on the East Coast of the US, correct?
Yep. I'm based in Boston.
Okay. And Caitlin, what about you?
We're currently on sabbatical from our travels back in Southern California for a few months. Yep.
Okay, good. So Emily, tell us a little bit about your role at Prisma, and then we can hop over to Caitlin.
Yeah, so I am our head of learning innovation, but I've been with Prisma from the very beginning before we launched in 2020. My background is in sort of non-traditional educational settings. I've worked at theater companies. I've also done some academic research. I was in the creative computing lab at Harvard. And then Prisma, I came on as one of our two founding curriculum designers and really envisioned what we wanted to be teaching kids, what kind of program we wanted to design, and spent the past 2 years mostly building out the middle school curriculum. And then this year, my role has transitioned to keep doing that, but also be working more with our high school program, which just launched this year. Awesome. We have a pilot of 25 high schoolers this year, and we're going to have more next year, as well as doing some more marketing and outreach type efforts like this call right now.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I mean, wearing lots of hats when you're with an ed tech startup. Okay, and Caitlin, how many kids do you have? Let us know about your worldschooling lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. So my husband and I took our kids when they were 5, 7, and 9, and we headed around the world. So we've done about 25 countries in the last 18 months, and now they're 7, 9, and 11. And yeah, it's been an amazing experience. We started with unschooling for the first 5 weeks as we were going across the US. And then I was lucky enough to find a Facebook ad for Prisma. And I had like an interview with Kristen, like the week before we left. We were buying a laptop like the day before we got on the plane. And I was like, this sounds perfect. It sounds too good to be true, but let's try it. Let's jump in. And so the day before we left the US, we were signing her up for Prisma. And the other two boys, we discovered like they're too young for Prisma. So we bought them just a bunch of Abeka curriculum books, and we just haul like 50 pounds of workbooks around with us.
Oh my God.
Because we realized we wanted them, because they were doing a lot of digital apps, but I realized like, you know what? I want my kids to understand penmanship, like the fine motor skills of writing on a piece of paper. And so we decided for the little ones, it was easier to have kind of more structure and more paper-based learning. But yeah, it's a whole piece of luggage on its own.
Yeah, that's amazing that you do that, because there's so many online apps and stuff. We've kind of done a mixture of all that. But so your oldest one, you just felt like the unschooling wasn't working out.
Yeah, I realized like I tend to vacillate. I either try to be too ambitious. So we have my older stepson, when he was in 7th grade, we tried to homeschool him. And I was like, I'm going to pack all of ancient civilization into 1 year. And we went from the Epic of Gilgamesh to Plato's Republic in 1 school year for a 12-year-old. And I was like, oh, that might be a little too extreme, right? So that was one extreme. And then unschooling was the other, like, they'll figure it out. Like, they're climbing a Mayan pyramid. Like, they don't need to know where this fits into the historical timeline. It'll all work itself out. So I realized, like, I'm not the best at finding moderation. And I realized I really want to be Cora's friend and partner in education rather than the administrator and like person who's in charge of making sure she checks all the right boxes. So I just had to think really creatively about how do I want to show up in my kids' learning experience, and Prisma was the best fit for us.
Awesome. Great. Emily, just so you know, I made you co-host because my internet is not great. I'm in Bulgaria. So in case I drop out, just continue to talk amongst yourselves and I'll come back as soon as possible. Okay, great. So let's talk about Prisma because, our audience, my Facebook group is made up mostly of world schoolers or people who want to start world schooling. So I know that Prisma works great for all sorts of different kinds of kids and families. But I want to make sure this is something that, might work for some of the world schoolers. And again, we all do it differently. So this might work for some versus others. But let's ask a couple world school specific questions before we move on, because people might get the answers and go, this is not for me. And then you don't have to watch the whole video. I hope you will anyway. But anyway, so what time zones does Prisma work in? Because I know you're based in the US, but you have students in other parts of the world. So Emily, what do you say?
Yeah, so Prisma does have like live classes as well as asynchronous work. So there are, of course, some realities of scheduling when those live meetings happen. The vast majority of our kids right now are in the North and South American time zones. However, we do have kids occasionally from other time zones, and we do have a growing group of kids in Hawaii, as well as sometimes kids from Europe. But the thing is right now is if you're in Europe, you are usually participating in a cohort that has kids in North and South American time zones. So the timing can be a little funky. Right now, we're definitely interested in expanding to other parts of the world, but we kind of have growing wait lists in different areas. For example, if you wanted to be in an Australian cohort, we have a wait list that's been growing. So eventually the way we would like to do that is to launch an Australia-based cohort with an Australia coach. And that also opens up options for kids who are traveling around the world as well to kind of pop between these different cohorts depending on where they are. But that said, lots of families make it work right now while traveling. Caitlin, I would love to hear a little bit about how you guys have managed the time zone thing with Cora's cohort.
Yeah, Australia was the hardest. She was getting up at 11, in the Philippines, it was 11 p.m. Well, staying up to 11 p.m. and then going to bed about 2 a.m. Australia, I think it was very similar because we were on the East Coast. So yeah, it was a challenge when we were in Asia. She happens to be a night owl, so she loved it. We're now back in Los Angeles, and so now she has to wake up at 7 a.m. She's going to get on her cohort here in about 45 minutes, and she likes it much less than staying up late. When we go to Europe, we'll have to probably find a different cohort that meets at a different time. But yeah, it's just Prisma's been really flexible about helping us find a cohort that works. And I mean, we're the worst ones because we are constantly traveling. It's not like, give us one cohort that's perfect for Bulgaria forever. It's like, well, we need Bulgaria this today, and then we're going to need Kenya next week, and then we're going to need India the week after that. So we just sort of make adjust our schedule to it, but there's pros and cons to every situation. So when Cora was having her work at night, it just meant we all slept in the next morning and we got a full day of adventure in, and then she'd be back in time to get on her classes after we laid the boys down for bed. So we just made sure she had her own room and her own privacy while we were in Bangkok and over there. So yeah, it ended up working really well. But I think as a world school family, adaptability has to be one of your number one highest ranked family values and skill sets. You just have to learn to roll with the punches and figure things out as you go.
Exactly. Yeah, Asia is the toughest. When I spent a lot of time there, the world schooling parents would be working from midnight to 7 a.m. or whatever. And sometimes their kids would be up at that time, just kind of living that lifestyle. But it's hard because there's stuff to do during the daytime. And one mom was not getting very much sleep. There is a family here at the Bansko World School Hub who is enrolled, a boy who's enrolled in Prisma. And they said, yeah, when they were in Mexico, obviously it was during their daylight times, and now it's in the evening. So it's a challenge because sometimes there's events here in the evening, so they have to kind of make a decision what they're going to do. But at least they have their daytime to go skiing and do other things. Okay, so we talked about that, but let's talk about how flexible Prisma is regarding scheduling. Do you have mandatory attendance? How does it work when people need to catch a flight, when they need to take a little bit of time off to travel or sightsee, or maybe there's little pop-up or something, hub, like I'm going to one in Florence, Italy for a week, you know, and it's like jam-packed. And what would happen if a World School family wanted to kind of participate in those kind of things?
Caitlin, I would love if you, since you mentioned how flexible, you know, you found Prisma to be, if you could talk a little bit about adjustments you guys have made with attendance.
Well, I don't know what the official requirements are, but we have not met any of them, if there are any. I don't think Prisma, okay, you're gonna have to tell me, Emily, are there official attendance requirements? Because we have not probably met them.
We do track attendance for our accreditation, but there's not like a hard requirement. And the thing with an online school, at least the way our program is set up, is asynchronous work is a really important part of the experience. So even if a kid isn't attending every single workshop, that's not the only form of learning that they're doing. So even if they're missing a workshop, they're still working on their project, they're still working on their writing mission, their math missions asynchronously. And so that is another form of attendance that we track too.
Can students watch the recording of you know, a live section that they missed?
Yes, that's an option as well. We record everything. Can send it out.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I don't know that Cora's ever bothered to go back and watch replays that she's missed. But I think the thing is she genuinely enjoys her classes. Like, this is her community. Like the first month or so with any new school, it was hard, but she started building friendships, and now like Prismarians are the ones she spends most of her day talking to, even just for fun. So she'll get herself up most days to get on her cohort calls, and she genuinely enjoys being there. So usually it's not like, okay, you have to go. It's more like, oh my gosh, Prisma. So she wants to be there. And usually if we're traveling, we'll just let the coaches know, like, hey, we're going to be traveling this day or this week. And we've been really upfront with Prisma from the beginning that the travel is the primary priority. and so like, we're like, if it's the option of like going and exploring a Hindu temple that's 900 years old, or sitting in a Zoom room and watching a stand-up meeting, like, we have clear priorities about what we're going to do with our family. So Prisma's been fantastic about being really flexible with us. And I don't think, because we're not in a particular state, we haven't had to like file like with an ISP. So I know we have a really unique situation that we don't have to file grades or do a lot of that reporting that's required if you're in the US. So Emily, I'm curious, for people who do need to submit grades, how does that work? Because I've never actually had to do any of the grading or anything like that.
Yes, it depends a lot on your state if you're US based, and also depends on your country, because everywhere has different laws about homeschooling. Since we are in the accreditation process this year, we are officially a school. So in the vast majority of states and the vast majority of countries, you don't need to register as a homeschooler to do Prisma anymore. When we first started, before we had like begun the accreditation process, we did ask everyone to register as homeschoolers, but now most states you don't. There's a couple states where it's a little bit funky. I actually think Massachusetts is one of them, where if you're going to an online school that's not based in Massachusetts, they consider you a homeschooler, so you have to register, but it just really depends on your state. And we do have experience with kind of most of the states so far, and kind of know how to take what we're doing at Prisma and transform it into whatever template is needed depending on where you live. So we do that individually for families.
I love where the conversation's going, but people are starting to ask questions, and I've got a bunch to ask too. And I'm trying to keep this all within around 45 minutes, if possible. So Christina's asking for the age range, and I was going to ask that too. I know you have on your website the grades you cover, but because it's an international audience, I think it's better for us to talk about the age, beginning and the upper.
Yes. So right now we serve grades 4 through 10, which is about ages 8 to 15, I would say. And we do have linked somewhere on our website a little table where you can translate grade levels for different countries if that's confusing or you're not sure.
That answers Christina's question. Okay, so and then students from all over the world can enroll, correct?
Correct.
Okay, awesome. If the time zone works for them and whatnot. And again, we can talk about whether or not the accreditation and all of that works for the country that you're in. But again, we're talking about nomadic families, people who move around. And from what I understand, if you're out of our country, the US, at least out of our state, because in the US, it's education is kind of run state by state. I've never registered us as homeschoolers in Washington state because we're out of the state usually, and they have no jurisdiction over us. So, and I don't really like to have to report to a government entity about what we're learning, because what we're doing is innovative and we're trailblazing, right? Trailblazing families. So anyway, that's our approach, and hopefully the other families will agree. Okay, so let's talk about the Prisma's history and why it's around. So it launched a few years, 2-3 years ago? How long ago?
Yes, spring 2020. So right at the beginning of the pandemic. Yes.
Because I'm sure they planned to launch it for a while, and then bam, the pandemic hit. So
you're exactly right. So yes, our incredible founders, Victoria and Alan, they're a married couple, and they're serial entrepreneurs. Prisma is their third company, I believe, and they're parents themselves, and they have 3 young children, and they are from 2 different countries. They're really interested in traveling and raising their kids all over the world. And as they were looking into schooling options, they were feeling like they really wanted something that gave kids community, that had an innovative real world curriculum. They didn't necessarily want to homeschool or be responsible for everything that kids were learning, but they wanted the flexibility and they wanted the ability to move around. So that's really where the idea for Prisma was born, as they were looking at schooling options for their own kids.
I didn't know that they wanted it because they were somewhat nomadic. I thought they just wanted an online school, just not interested in having a brick and mortar school. So tell us a little bit about Prisma's philosophy and what you guys are thinking about as far as education.
Yeah, absolutely. So we believe that the goal of education should be to prepare kids for the future. And we know that the world is rapidly changing. We believe that we need to be preparing kids to be adaptable, to be flexible, to be able to work with people from all over the world, to be equipped with real world skills, to be really curious and lifelong learners, to be creative thinkers, to be good communicators, and to be able to take initiative and follow through. So we kind of started from that place in mapping out our curriculum to build those real world skills and connect learning to the real world. And then we believe that the best way to do that is to make learning really engaging and fun. So we build in tons of choice to what the kids are doing, so they can really personalize their experience to their interests and to their goals, and learn at their own pace, rather than saying, okay, you're going to sign on to a call, you're going to hear a lecture, and you're going to do a worksheet and do the same thing day in, day out. Kids are working on projects. They're being creative, they're choosing what they want to work on, as well as the relationship piece is a huge part of our philosophy. So Caitlin was talking about her learners cohort. The cohort piece is a huge part of our philosophy, that we match kids with a small group of other kids that we think will really get along, that they'll challenge each other to grow, that they'll build these deep relationships, and cohorts can stay together over multiple years. Each cohort also has a mentor coach that is working with all of the kids in that cohort, and they're giving each learner feedback on their work. They're meeting with them one-on-one. They're building that deep connection, figuring out what motivates each kid, developing a really deep relationship with the parents as well, and really having this partnership between the child, the coach, and the parent. And we find that that really just is the secret sauce, is that relationship piece of the coach, the cohort, and the kids. And at the end of each cycle, kids present their work at an expo day. They get really motivated to share their work with their community. And yeah, so I would say the 3 pillars are just kind of this innovative real world curriculum, this mentorship with the learning coach and the supportive peer community of the cohort.
That's awesome. Yeah, so really innovative. And I've seen like, I mean, I can kind of identify some of what you're saying in like democratic schools and, you know, brick and mortar, very progressive, innovative schools, but you're bringing it in online, which is amazing. Completely different from the traditional school system that still has a 50-year-old curriculum, and they're not teaching the 21st century skills, like you mentioned, the, you know, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. So that's awesome. Okay, so tell us a little bit more about the curriculum, and then I want to get Caitlin's response of what her daughter, right, feels about the curriculum so far.
Yeah, so our curriculum is organized into themes. So this is about the middle school level. There's some slight differences with the high school level, but the middle school has 6-week-long interdisciplinary themes, and we map our themes for the year based on those real world skills that we want kids to learn, as well as the academics that they need to be prepared for high school. And we combine all of these competencies in interesting ways, have the kids vote on which themes they're most excited about, and also make sure that each theme is really wide open so kids can choose a lot of different projects and tasks to do within each theme. So
what are some examples of themes?
Yeah. So some of our most
can I jump in?
Of course.
This is my favorite part of Prisma. So the way, like in a nutshell that I could explain is like, it's learner-led, project-based. Like, so each cycle they say, here's the theme. So the first one we did when we first joined was exploring uncharted territories. And so Cora could explore deep space or deep ocean, and she wants to be a marine biologist. So it was a really clear fit. It's kind of how we sold her on the idea in the first place. And so during the 6-week cycle, she had to create her own ecosystem. She had designed her own plants, design her own predators. Like, she did Tinkercad, where she had to like actually create them and explain what the dandelion algae does and how it procreates and how that interacts with her rainbow snake and that sort of thing. And so it was just really fun to see those dynamics. And then we went into another cycle. Probably my favorite so far was they were all UN ambassadors. And so she was Sweden. So she had to research Sweden. We had to like cook Swedish food and explore their language and their culture and their art. And then they would come together into the UN and discuss the Syrian refugee crisis. And I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about the Syrian refugee crisis. And now my daughter has to like argue about what to do with 50,000 refugees. Like, it was so neat to see her like engaging with genuine real world issues and like having to balance like practical economics with compassion. You know, it was so fun.
Amazing. That's great. Okay, and we've got some people watching here, so feel free to jump in and ask some questions. Okay, so we already talked about Prisma being synchronous and having some asynchronous stuff going on. So can you explain the how that works, or the schedule, or whatever you have? Because you obviously have these connected learning networks. I want to learn more about that, but you have these cohorts around the US time zone. I'm guessing some are like at 8 a.m. Pacific, and then, you know, later on, I mean, all different times, correct? Because they're not all meeting at one time for the check-ins, are they?
No. So yeah, we have different cohorts start their day at different times. And it's when we're putting kids in cohort, we're looking at time zone, but we're also looking at that personality match. So some cohorts might say like, okay, like maybe this one meets at Pacific time, but I would rather be in this other cohort that has this coach that I really love. So it's flexible, but we do have different options depending on your time zone. Okay. I can talk a little bit about the workshop schedule though.
Yeah, so tell me what's synchronous and what's asynchronous.
Yeah, so at minimum on Monday through Thursday, kids will have a stand-up in the morning. So that's a 30-minute call that starts their day. And that is with their cohort and their coach. And the focus is really on community building, on just laying a good foundation for work for the day, like some really fun, we do some video announcements now that the kids really like, and then just setting up your workspace for productivity, just setting goals, as well as just that social emotional bonding with the cohort. So they have a daily stand-up, and then they have 1 hour long workshop per day. And that depends on the day of the week. At the beginning of the week, the focus is project workshop and literacy lab. Project workshop is where they're coming together and working on their projects, giving each other feedback, getting that support to move to the next stage in their cycle project. And literacy lab is focused on the reading and writing elements of that theme or that project. And then on Wednesdays and Thursdays, they have the collaborative problem solving workshop. So that workshop is not directly tied to the project, but is related to the rest of the cycle theme. And kids are working in groups to solve real world problems. And they're also learning how to work with a group and how to have a discussion and speak up and then step back and listen to other people. Some examples of the topics that we've covered in collaborative problem solving. When we did our build a business entrepreneurship theme, we did kind of a Shark Tank simulation where kids got to hear about different businesses and decide which ones they wanted to invest in and see their money grow or shrink kind of week by week based on how the businesses did. Another one we did this fall was in our World of Wonder theme. We had the city of Ventus that had lost power due to a tornado, and the kids had to decide how to repower the city with sustainable energy sources. And so they had to look at the map and kind of decide where they wanted to place different kinds of forms of energy as they were learning about it. And then they got to present to a real panel of energy experts at the end of the session. So we usually try to design like a real world simulation that kids get really excited about so that they can build those group teamwork skills. I didn't mention math workshops. The timing of those depends on kids' math level. We find depending on where your kid is at in math, they might need more or less time per week. And those are focused on teaching the math skills, but also engaging in similar like simulations and games to build that real world math learning.
Amazing, amazing. Caitlin, is your kiddo enjoying all these different the ways to learn instead of just sitting in a school and memorizing stuff from lectures and books and taking tests?
Absolutely. I think she's sort of forgotten what that looks like now. I think it would be really hard for her to reintegrate. That was actually one of our thoughts when it was like, well, we have to get back to the States in time for Cora to start normal junior high so she doesn't miss out on the experience. And after being in Prisma for 1 year, I was like, well, throw that out. Like we can travel as long as we want because we're never going back. So I do really feel like it really feeds her soul. And she does the craziest things. Like she and her friend will just get on Canva and design these beautiful, elaborate things. I'm like, how do you know how to use Canva? Like, oh, well, we had to use Canva to do this thing. Like she knows so much about what tech and apps are available. And it's native for her. It's her intuitive language now to just express herself. Like we're playing around with Midjourney right now and we're loving it, right? And so it's just so fun to see her self shine and her personality come out. And it's not like she's trying to fit into a box. Like she's really good at some things, not so great at others. We still have not found a math solution that she loves, but like we're working through Zern and like helping her with it. But there's a lot of space for her to tailor it to what she needs and what she wants. So I feel like she feels a sense of ownership to the education process that I know is going to serve her, because when we force our kids to learn, and as soon as we stop putting that pressure on, they stop learning, right? But my husband and I were homeschooled. We're just genuinely curious people. We will be educating ourselves for our whole life, right? So I think it's that key, like, don't kill the creative spark, don't kill their innate curiosity. And Prisma's doing a great job of like kindling that until it's kind of a little flame, as opposed to stamping it out as effectively as possible, which is what I feel the traditional school system does.
Yes, I mean, I keep talking about the most watched TED Talk ever by Sir Ken Robinson. Does school kill creativity? Answer is yes, it does. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the Connected Learning Network. What is that?
Yeah, so that's an idea. And we're not sure if we're going to keep using that terminology or not, but I'll tell you what it originally meant. So the idea is kind of when I was initially describing how Prisma was founded and what Victoria and Alon were looking for, it was really like, there really should be a form of learning that is like homeschooling, but connected to other people. And so the idea was that a connected learning network is like connected to peers. So there's a network of small cohorts that are all connected to each other. So you get kind of the best of both worlds of that one room schoolhouse experience, but also the network. Yeah. And also connected from learners connecting to their interests of why do I need to learn this, kind of seeing that relevance. So kind of two definitions of the word connected there.
Okay. So it's kind of like having a global homeschool co-op where people who have like interests get together and connect with each other. Okay. So I don't know which one of you wants to describe a day in the life of a Prisma student. Maybe Caitlin, since your kiddo's in it. I mean, so your kiddo wakes up or maybe does it in the evening. I mean, depending on.
Yeah. So yeah, day in the life of for us is pretty flexible. She wakes up, well, right about now. We should be going in there and being her alarm clock. And then she'll sit in front of her computer, get on Zoom for her stand-up call. Her stand-up meetings are cohorts. And it was really interesting when we first started having these stand-ups. I was like, well, what's the point of the stand-up? And they were like, just to have fun and bond with each other. I'm like, well, that doesn't seem very academic. but now I understand, like, this is the important part. This is where you're building that connective tissue and like being a human, and they take turns leading them. So Cora had to like come up with her own activity to lead the stand-up, and like that's a whole different skill set. But it's almost like just learning Zoom skills. Like it's a weird thing, but that's a necessary requirement, is how do you navigate an online meeting? Like, I don't think that's ever going away. And so it was interesting, but like, okay, now I get it. So now Christy is her coach. We've gone to Christy's house and hung out. Like, we're just genuinely good friends. Like, Cora loves Christy. Christy loves Cora. And then she goes into, like, she'll have probably a half an hour break. Then she'll go into math or literacy lab. She'll do one of her other cohorts with a different, like, Javi leads her math. And I don't know, is Lena still learning literacy, or like she'll go to different labs?
That's Christy now. That's like the
Chris. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. So now we switched. Okay. So I don't always know. Like, this is the beautiful thing. Cora has her own calendar with her own dates and times, and she knows where she's supposed to be and what Zoom room she's supposed to be in. And she does most of that management herself. I think that was probably the hardest part. And Prisma has been beautiful about actively soliciting feedback and implementing it very quickly. So our first year, I felt like we had no idea where to find anything and what is Core responsible for. The second year, it's gotten better, and they just keep tightening it up to make sure that we know, here's where you go, here's all of her checklists, here's the date and time that here's the deadline that she needs to be done by. And so that has really helped me to be an accountability partner and to say, okay, Core, like, let's look, you're supposed to be done with task 2 of her project Friday. Right. So Friday we were like hustling to like make sure we finished up all the tasks for task 2. And then we know we have to get through task 5 by the end of this week so that she's prepared for Expo Day. And so the fun thing about Expo Day is, I don't know if you've ever, like, you know, like science projects or like group projects, and you're like the night before you're like, hurry, like everybody's glue stuff on the board. And it's always chaos. The beautiful thing is, like, they give us feedback, like, oh, Cora's not on track, like, heads up, like, do this. And then she'll sit down and she'll meet with Christy. Like last cycle, she was just stymied. She was like stuck. Like, I can't come up with any ideas. And so we worked through lots of ideas. She had to make a movie about belonging, right? And so we were like talking through what those scripts could be. And then usually they have to like prepare their stuff for Expo Day like a week in advance, and they're doing like rehearsals. So it really takes a lot of pressure off, knowing that, okay, she's ready. And then the Expo Days are my favorite. I invite our whole families to it. This last one, because it was art themed, it was like a whole talent show. Like, kids were writing their own music and putting on their own plays. And like, it was just insane what these kids are capable of. So it was really fun.
That's amazing. Wow, that sounds like so much fun. And tell me again the age of your daughter again.
She just turned 11.
Yeah, and that's so much that she needs. She's learning how to be responsible and organized and accountable and keep on track. I mean, all of the stuff that I'm hearing is how to be an awesome kick butt employee or entrepreneur running a company.
Or human.
common. I know, but still, like it just helps these kids learn these skills now versus after they finish college and are floundering in their first job out of college. They're learning it now, which is really amazing.
Yeah, as an entrepreneurial family, like knowing like these are the skill sets you will need to run your own company. And like Cora just decided she wants to be the youngest self-made billionaire. I'm like, okay, let's talk about what that means.
Wow.
But like for her, it's like, sure, why not? Like I see other people doing it. Why can't I? Like it's innate in her. So it's really fun to see that level of confidence built.
Let's talk about
definitely believe that Cora will do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's talk about Prisma coaches, because do the team members do all different things like stand-ups and run these other whatever cohorts, clubs, and project-based stuff?
Yeah, so we believe, like I said, that the mentor, coach, and cohort relationship is really important. So we like to keep the kids with their mentor coach for as much of the week as possible, rather than having coaches doing lots of different things. So one mentor coach will run stand-up every single day for their cohort, as well as project workshop and literacy lab, and they'll be meeting one-on-one with kids. Collaborative problem solving, we have coaches that specialize in that, and then we have math coaches that specialize in math, but otherwise you're with your same mentor coach for a good chunk of the week. And you mentioned clubs. We do have enrichments that are run by coaches, and that's really the opportunity where when coaches have a special interest that they're really excited about, they can run an extracurricular enrichment in that topic. So for example, we have one mentor coach this year who is a really, really talented musician, and she runs a songwriting enrichment that is super popular. And so that way you can meet kids who are not in your cohort in those like interest-based enrichments. That's another thing mentor coaches.
It's good to meet a wider variety of students. So what's your annual calendar? Do you kind of follow the, fall to spring and with summers off?
Yes. Yeah. It was funny when we initially started Prisma, we were like, oh, it's more innovative to do like year round. And every single family was like, no, we want the summer break. Please put the summer break in. So we were like, okay, noted. We'll do that. So yeah, we follow late August to early June calendar. And I mentioned cycles earlier. There's 6 cycles per year.
Okay, and then let's get into the pricing, because your pricing on your website, you call it pricing, not tuition, which is interesting. And you price it per cycle, not for the whole school year. So can someone sign up for just one cycle?
So you can technically do just one cycle, but most people pay for the whole year. And the tuition, if you add up for the full year, it's $9,450 for the middle school and a little bit higher for the high school.
Okay, got it. Okay, so no discounts if you pay for the whole year versus cycle by cycle.
There is a discount if you pay for the whole year up front. Okay, yeah, I think it's 5%.
Okay, good. Okay, well, I think I forgot to ask, how many hours a day is a student typically spending with Prisma?
So live, it would be at minimum, not counting Fridays, because Fridays are a flexible day that is left open without a stand-up or a workshop. I should have mentioned that earlier. But then Monday through Thursday, at minimum, it would be an hour and a half of live time if they attend their stand-up and their workshop. And then we estimate between an hour and a half to 2 hours of asynchronous work a day, but that can be adjusted if you want to do, if you have travel plans during the weekdays and you want to do more on the weekend. It's not like you have to do it on that day.
Okay, so a few hours a day, which is pretty typical for homeschool kids, I think. I mean, depending on the age. Caitlin, do you think that the 3 hours a day works for you guys, or whatever?
I was just going to say, I'm really horrible at measuring this, because like Cora's in there doing stuff all the time, but I don't always know if she's like, are you creating that for school, or are you just creating it for fun? And like, it's hard for me to distinguish all of that. So sometimes we have to go back and like, okay, no, like, I know you've gone on this little rabbit trail of research, but that's not your project. Like, bring it back in. So I don't, it's kind of like a gray area. I know she's in there and she's working, but how much of it is like actually on her real assignment, and how much is just, this is the rabbit trail that I'm following, I don't have a clear picture of. But yeah, you could finish the tasks on a Saturday if you had to catch up really quick. which we've done a couple times.
Okay. And are students spending time on other online apps at all? Is that part of the Prisma thing, or does Prisma provide everything you think that a student needs it to be well educated?
So Caitlin mentioned Zern earlier. That's the one app that's built into our curriculum for math right now. We don't have other learning apps built into our curriculum. We like to do kind of everything else with our like project-based kind of custom curriculum approach. Some families will layer on additional apps, but there's not any particular gap in our curriculum that they're filling through that. It's just kind of
unless they have an interest, they want to take an out-school class or whatnot. Okay, and you mentioned that Prisma is trying to be accredited, and how does that work? Because I know that some of these accreditation organizations are still pretty old school, and what you're doing is pretty innovative. And I know, I mean, Montessori's and Waldorf's and all of them are accredited, I think. So how are you guys getting accredited? And is that going to make you change any of your curriculum?
Yeah, that was one of my big concerns too with accreditation. But no, so we're working through Cognia, which is probably the most innovative accreditation agency. And really what Cognia looks for, first of all, they are, the accreditation goes through 74 countries. So it's not just US based. So that'll be really nice for families that travel. And really all they're looking at is the business end of our stuff of, do we have great policies for training and supporting our learning coaches? Are we operating under a sustainable business model? Are we focused on continuous improvement? So are we taking data from our families and from our learners and then improving our offering based on that? They do not really have a ton of requirements over curriculum at all. It's more on the way that we operate. So that was a pleasant surprise.
And it's called, what's it called? Cognia?
Cognia.
And their accreditation is respected or accepted in many different countries. You said 75?
Yeah.
And are these the countries where homeschooling is legal, or maybe some that are in the gray area? I
don't know for sure on all of the countries where it's illegal, but since it's, we would be a school at that point, we wouldn't be homeschool. So I don't know if that.
Well, my next question, or one of my question is about getting kids ready to apply for university. So I'm guessing that this accreditation and the diploma, I'm guessing that they'll get from you, and probably transcripts or something. Yes. From you, yes. Or a portfolio or whatever that will be recognized in the United States and other countries that have, lots of, alternative education, and homeschooling is legal. But then, in Germany, homeschooling is illegal. Sweden, there's a bunch of countries around the world. And I know world schoolers from those countries, and they have had to leave. I mean, they go during the summer and whenever their school breaks, but they've had to leave and deregister. Like we Americans, we don't need to deregister because we still have to file taxes no matter where we are in the world, but they will deregister and not pay taxes while they're gone. They'll deregister their kids from their school, deregister from the whole town, from everything. And that sometimes means they will not get the national health care, or, because a lot of these countries have benefits, like sometimes families are paid for having children. They won't get those. So, I mean, some people, it's worth it to them to do this because they want the freedom for their kids to learn in a more innovative way. So if somebody, for example, from Germany attends Prisma and they're world schooling and they want to attend university in Germany, will that work? I mean, I'm sure they can apply to the US, UK, and other countries where your accreditation is valid. That's the tricky part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the thing to look into would be the regulations around online schools in the country, because we've found that the regulations of homeschooling and online schools do not necessarily overlap, and they're constantly evolving because online schools is such a growing market.
For these ministries of education that are so stuck in the dinosaur ages, so
yeah, so that's what I would suggest people look into, is the regulations around diplomas from an online school, is that treated just the same as a regular school, or is that treated more like homeschooling?
Yeah. Well, I do know there's many umbrella schools out there that, you know, have clients in these countries, students or whatever. They don't really do the teaching. They just take what the kids are learning and putting it on their transcripts, and they're accredited. So, but you guys are already getting your accreditation. So that sounds awesome. Okay, so how involved do parents need to be in their kids' you know, education, like setting up, making sure they show up on time? I mean, I used to have to program Alexa to remind my kids that their class was starting in 3 minutes, and they had to, you know, get ready because otherwise they'll forget.
It depends a lot on the family and on the kid. I would say at Prisma, we talk a lot about a learner's autonomy level. So not necessarily their academic level, but how independent can they be? And our goal is for that to go up the more time they spend at Prisma, and to kind of gradually release into taking ownership. So some families spend very little time supporting because their kid just got it, they know how to sign on, they're keeping on track with their work, and other kids need a lot more support. So we definitely support parents in figuring out what is the right amount there. And also some families who are really passionate homeschoolers, but we're just looking for more community. They really like working alongside their kids. There's one family I'm thinking of where her son is super mature and could definitely handle Prisma all the way on his own, but he and his mom and dad have a lot of fun, like working on the projects together and exploring the resources together. So why not spend a bunch of time?
That's awesome. And you don't
they are all genuinely interesting topics. Like this one right now, we're doing biomimicry. And so we're researching like real world problems and how has nature solved these with animals and plants. So it's so fun. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to study this, right? So I definitely see that. What's interesting is we just had a parent coaching session where the parents got to come together with a facilitated parent coach to like talk about parenting, which was so fun. And what we noticed is a lot, like we actually had a second group I was kind of helping facilitate, and the second group was a lot of neurodivergent kids, and we had a completely different experience from the first one. It was not planned, it just happened. But the first one, it was like, yeah, my kid wakes themselves up, they get on their thing, everything's fine, I just kind of check in every other week and see how they're doing and make sure we're on track. And then with the neurodivergent group, they're like, no, like I would love that, but my kid has ADHD and like I have to sit there and like walk them through this. And so it was like a completely different experience. But there's a whole like little subculture within Prisma for kids who just were not flourishing in traditional school systems, who have finally found like, oh, I belong here. And that was really beautiful to witness. These parents who have been like, we were pulling our hair out. We thought like everything was failing. And now we finally understand, no, this is just how you're wired. And we found a thing that really supports you at the highest level.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, so what are your hopes for a typical Prisma graduate, or expectations? Because you're new and you keep, you know, you could say, oh, I'd love the university or the top universities to accept our students, or they're all going to start small businesses that are going to become giant billion-dollar businesses. What are your hopes?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely think we'll have Prismarians who found really amazing companies and invent really amazing products, but ultimately our goal is to prepare kids to thrive. So we spent some time thinking like, what does that word really mean and what does that look like? And we defined it as you're equipped to engage in fulfilling work. So you have the opportunity to do something meaningful that you enjoy for your work, to form positive relationships. We think that's just really important, to be able to connect with people in all kinds of settings from all walks of life and know how to build those friendships. And also cultivate well-being. We think that's really important as well. Just physical.
That's not taught enough in regular schools. So
yeah. And then also being driven to create a positive impact. So that's why, you know, when we're looking at our real world theme topics, the emphasis is often on identifying a problem and trying to design a solution, and just kind of having that empathy and really wanting to make something that makes the world a better place.
Amazing, amazing. Let's talk about how Prisma is different from other online schools, because I know of a bunch where they're asynchronous. There's a bunch of text and photos and videos that kids have to consume and memorize and take tests, but then there are a few other innovative ones similar to Prisma. So let's talk about both. I mean, I think what you've explained kind of clearly explains how you're different from the older kind of stuff, you know, basically the homeschool curriculum just stuck online. But, you know, there's some other innovative ones like Sora, it's more of a high school, or Kubrio, or I don't know, I'm still trying to figure out, you know, who are the main players. So how would you say that you guys are different or better?
Yeah, so definitely have a lot of admiration for Kubrio and Sora and a lot of these other great schools that are in this space with us. I would say one thing that is different from what I know about those models is our focus on community and just really intentionally building a tight-knit community of kids. I think some of the other models are really emphasizing choice, and we care a lot about choice as well, but we know that if every 6 weeks you're choosing different classes to do, then you might not have that mentor who really gets you and that peer group that really supports you, and just be building that community over multiple years. And we've found that at the end of the day is what brings families back year after year, is the community piece. And we've found a way to give kids tons of choice within that community, but just we really want to intentionally build those relationships. So I'd say that's our number one differentiator.
Yeah. And I'll just jump in with the community piece. Like every parent group like that I've connected with, I'm like, oh, you're my people. Like, because we travel so much, I feel isolated most of the time. And so just realizing like, yeah, I bought a school for Cora, but really what I bought was like a home for our family, right? Like these are families who get us, who share our values, who do what we do, who are entrepreneurial, who travel a lot. And it was really amazing. I'm like, oh, I didn't know I was buying friends. Like, this is amazing. So it's really fun.
Yeah, and just to speak a little more about the parent community, one thing that's been really cool, that's really grown this year, is seeing how families are planning these meetups and these trips together. You guys didn't go to Costa Rica, did you, Caitlin?
No, but we're going to the lake retreat in June, and Jenna and I are planning an international one for next year.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so this was one of our biggest ones, is about at least 10 families, maybe even more, planned a trip to Costa Rica, where they got kind of a bunch of Airbnbs close to each other, and the kids did Prisma, but together in person from Costa Rica for a week. And it seems like it was
That's
just
awesome.
a blast, and there's families interested in organizing more stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the best. Yeah, I mean, again, I've been involved with an online school where that was my project. I was trying to have this hybrid learning happen, but it kind of fell apart. But I think that's the best of both worlds, the in-person and online, because there's so many things you can do online that are just more efficient, and you can build community, you can make connections with people, and you can learn in so many different ways online. And then also being in front of each other in person to hang out. That is awesome. Okay, so we already talked about oh, Caitlin, you just said you have to go. That's fine. You're welcome to go. But I just had a couple more.
It's been so lovely to be here. But
Thank you so much, Caitlin. I'm so glad you joined.
And to anybody who has questions, like, feel free to reach out and just ping me on Instagram at All Over the Map Family. Happy to support and answer questions and be available as a resource.
Hopefully you guys can join the Facebook group, and then there are a few comments and questions, so you can interact there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Caitlin. Okay, Emily, a couple more questions. So we already talked about the age requirement for to enroll in Prisma. What other requirements do you have? I'm guessing also to speak English, correct?
Yes, right now, yes. Fluent in English is a requirement, as well as just having a device that is high speed enough to be able to do calls. I know that especially when traveling, internet can be spotty. That's totally fine, but just as long as you have a device that can handle Zoom and just interacting in that way, as well as right now we do require learners to be on or above a 4th grade level in reading and math. That's just what our curriculum is designed to support.
How do you assess that? Do you test them when they apply?
So we do NWEA MAP testing twice per year. And that's not what we use as an admissions requirement, though. We kind of just go based on the parent's assessment, and then we can provide some assessments if you're really not sure where your child is at with grade level. But we found that just our curriculum is the most successful if you're in the reading to learn phase and not the learning to read
Right.
phase.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I have one more question, and then I wanted to go through some of the chat.
Mhm.
So why do you think a world schooling child would be a good fit for Prisma and vice versa?
Well, I think world schooling is really beautiful, but one of the things from families I've spoken with that can be a struggle is that consistency of having the consistent community of peers. And I think Prisma does a really great job at providing that. So no matter where you are in the world, you still have your friends that you get to see, as well as I think the flexibility of when and where you do your work beyond the live calls is really beneficial. And I also just selfishly love to have more world schoolers join our community because I think they add so much in terms of the experiences that they're having that they can share with the rest of our community. And the parents are always just like really engaged in building this beautiful parent community, as Caitlin mentioned as well.
And you mentioned that you have a special deal for Trailblazing families.
Yes. So if you join Prisma and you mention Trailblazing Families, we will give you $200 off of your deposit, which is applied right to tuition. So
awesome. Thank you so much for that.
That.
That is awesome. Okay, so let me read some of these things. They're just saying very cool real world connections, meaningful learning. Let's see. Daniela says Germany's higher education being free is highly regulated, and they are very much focused on grades to decide who gets space. So that's a problem in itself. Yep. Yeah, and again, the real world theme projects, especially the UN one you mentioned, she really liked that. And then somebody wanted you to elaborate a little bit more on the accreditation path. I guess with the company that you're going to be working with. I keep forgetting the name. It starts with a C. So what?
Yeah, Cognion. So
yeah, what do you do to become accredited with them?
So basically, what's involved is we submit them a bunch of different documentation of our processes and our training materials, our budget, just really let them under the hood into how we operate. And they also conduct 2 different site visits, which for us is they sit in on workshops and watch how our coaches facilitate. They also did some interviews with staff, but also interviewing some parents and some kids about their experience and just really asking them about the quality of our offering. And then our final review is just kind of a presentation of all of the different things that we've shown them so far, as well as any action items we've established for continuous improvement. Because as I mentioned before, that's the #1 thing that they care about, is that we're always improving. And that is happening in a couple weeks in early March, our last review. And assuming that goes well, then we'll have accreditation that will be retroactive through this whole school year. So, and then we'll be accredited from then on.
All right. I guess I forgot to ask you, you have 11th and 12th grade launching soon. So the last 2 years of high school?
Yes. So the way we wanted to start with just 9th and 10th graders for our first year at the high school, just so we can, build up their transcripts and get them ready for college slowly, rather than trying to catch them up at the end. And next year, our 10th graders will be 11th graders. So then we'll have 9th through 11th, and then we'll graduate our first class the year after that.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense for you to start with the 8, 9-year-olds and then move up, because so many teenagers have already they're already doing their education thing, whatever it is. And it's hard to start with a teen program. I mean, I know Sora has done that. They focus only on teens. I think you and Sora and Kubrio share some of the same investors. I mean, so that's pretty cool. Some investors who are really into, I think.
We don't have any investors.
Oh, you
actually.
don't?
Yeah, so we're totally bootstrapped. Yeah, we had kind of our initial funding from Victoria and Alon, and then we're just focused on generating revenue and doing it that way.
Awesome. Okay, for some reason I thought you got some funding from Silicon Valley or wherever. Well, great. Well, okay. I don't know, Emily, if you're in my Facebook group, I hope you will join, so then you can kind of, chit chat with the families that are watching. Kara said adaptability and flexibility are core necessities. Yeah, I mean, again, Prisma sounds amazing. I think for world schooling families, again, the flexibility, the adaptability, I'm very anti-traditional schools and the antiquated type of curriculum. And it's, you know, it's like the innovative private companies like Prisma that are or disrupting education, right? And redesigning it. The traditional schools, it just takes forever for them to change a little thing. So, you know, I hope that Worldschooling families, I think we're all pretty innovative. Most of us don't want to live in the box. And so Prisma is out of the box. So
Absolutely.
Everyone check it out. I need to put, I don't know, I will add your link for your website down below later. But yeah, I really appreciate your time, Emily. Great to chat with you.
Yeah, and if you want to add to the description to the kind of offer of $200 off their deposit, if they mention you guys, that might be helpful to have in written form too, just in case people don't watch.
Yeah, and if it's okay, I'm going to post this on YouTube later, so I can put that in the comments there. Okay, awesome. All right, thank you, Emily.
Well, thank you, Liz. This has been a great call. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for watching. This is Lizz Quain with Trailblazing Families. My twins and I have been traveling and world schooling for over 6 years, and I'm happy to share about our experiences. Make sure to check out the other videos on this channel. I do have a playlist of all the other interviews of other world schooling families and service providers. We're all happy to share our information and wisdom about how to best live this world schooling, digital nomad, and family travel lifestyle. If you're new to world schooling and need a bit of help, I do have a super comprehensive 12-week program on how to travel extensively as a family and how to world school, how to educate your kids. There's many different ways to do it. So reach out to me and schedule a no obligation Zoom meeting so we can have a quick chat and see if my program is a good fit for you. Thanks and happy trails.